broken system, chained and tangled up in lies. Voices shouting, screaming in defeat. Politicians playing games under darkened skies. Hope lost in the dust of the street. Red and blue, colors pouring from the sky. Debates turn to anger, oh, the crowd gets loud. Punches flying in the blink of an eye. Truth buried deep beneath the shroud. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive. Faces on the screen, flashing perfect teeth. But behind those eyes, just rotting greed. Politicians turn to whispers beneath. They all just get what they need. Whispering conspiracies, drowning in their lies. Echoes of freedom, lost in cries. Spin the wheel of fate, let's see who rise. But this game will bleed you dry. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive.
Good morning or good afternoon to some of you, including little Chad. Welcome to the Bullpen, where we're going to talk about the week in politics. We've got a new audio visualizer just because I liked it. And yeah, we got a lot of topics this week. Didn't have a show last week because I was in Vegas, where I got my new Make America Great Again hat directly from Trump Tower.
Dark MAGA. Dark MAGA on
Yes.
deck.
I wanted the black on black, but they didn't have any, so I got the
I'm sure
the
you
new
did.
gold. But just to make sure that everybody knows exactly what you're wearing, there's something on every side of this hat, including the back, just so that you can definitely make sure everybody knows what the hat
know,
is. So
Brahma, that's what we call branding. You can't
branding.
leave. You've got all that real estate. You've got to brand it. If you
It's
don't
the
brand
perfect
it,
hat.
people have said it's the perfect hat. I don't know if I agree, but people have said that, Brahma. People
We've
have said
made
it's the
different
perfect hat.
versions. Every one of them is perfect. I'd like to thank Vex Electronica, who I did get to meet in Vegas in person, for raiding us this morning. I know there was a bit of a break between the end of her show and the start of ours, but thank you for sending everybody over, Vex. Hope you're doing well. And we got a whole bunch of the usual people in here, so good to see everybody. Also, yesterday was Slender Dad's birthday, so happy birthday to Slender Dad once again. And that is all he gets. That his birthday week is over because it's Sunday now.
Oh, I mean,
so.
we don't want to. I mean, otherwise we'll start getting into Mad with his birthday months. And
Yeah, we don't do birthday months. Only Mad does. So.
And I don't want anybody else buying Madden, so we don't need to do birthday months. Who knows what would happen?
True enough.
All right,
So yeah.
did in Vegas Trump stuff? Did people like it? Did they not like? What's the? I mean, he won Nevada, right? So
Yeah, he won Nevada. I don't know that Vegas is a good representation of Nevada with it being on the Strip, but What I can say is going over to Trump Tower, the place was absolutely packed. It was one of the busier hotels that I actually went into. And I don't know that it has a casino specifically attached to it. I think it is just a hotel for the building. It may have a casino on the back end or something or next to it, but um, the whole lobby was completely packed. There were tons of people in the shop. Um, Things were being sold left and right in there, so seems to still be pretty popular. I had no issues with wearing the hat around Vegas. Nobody said anything that was derogatory. I mostly got nods and tips of the hat um, as I was walking around in it. So I the things that the news try to tell you, yeah, it's not happening. I mean, it may happen on a small scale, but it's not. You walk around a major city with a hat on, and everybody just tries to beat you up. So it went well.
Eric Myers is confirming that the Trump Las Vegas Tower does not have a casino.
Yeah, I didn't think so because I don't know where it would have been. Of course, all we did was essentially walk into the lobby and go into the shop. A number of us, Shags was there, Professor Savage Dad, a few others. We all just decided to go over and try to find me a new hat. So,
Did uh did Shags find a nice hat for right in the middle?
no, Shags did not care about getting a hat. Plus, the price was a little bit steep for hats at Trump Tower itself. This thing cost $55, so more than I would ever
It's an
normally pay for a
investment,
hat.
Brahma. This is a collector's item. You're gonna
It's a
love it.
collector's item.
You'll be
It's
able
a
to pass it
write-off
down to
next
your
year
children.
because I wear it on stream. So,
You are a grand Brahma. You will pass that hat down to the next generation. They will love it.
no, the grandbaby's going to get the one with the hair until she gets her own.
So, in terms of Trump collectibles, the one thing that I have, and it got my so it just happened last week. You may have heard of the Trump, of the White House Easter egg roll, right?
Hmm.
So every
The one
year,
that Biden has to be guided around by the Easter Bunny.
so every year they do the White House Easter egg roll, and my wife worked at the Easter egg roll several years, several administrations.
Wow.
Obama, Trump, etc. She worked for an organization that provided talent for working the mascots and such for the people in the Easter Bunny outfit.
Right.
Anyway, so when she did the one with Trump, she brought me home. They had, how he has those like gold, the coins he gives out and everything.
Yeah. The
So
commemorative coins, that kind
in
of thing.
this case, yeah, they had this was from 2017, so this was his first one as president.
Hmm.
It is, and it's of course gold. It's an egg with the presidential seal on it. It says White House Easter egg roll 2017, and then it has Trump and Melania's signature on the backside of it. So it's that's I was like, oh, I'm not going to turn that down. That's like a pretty. It's not like something you can get in a store. You can't go down to Trump Tower and get it. But she
No.
and said Melania, no, it was the sweetest person she was around again several administrations, and that was the one where she felt the most welcomed. So
Well, I definitely wouldn't think that Jill Biden would be very welcoming. Um, but no, that's cool to have one of those coins. I did get one other item at Trump Tower, which I haven't unpacked yet, actually, but I did get a rocks glass so that I can now have some bourbon in a rocks glass that just says Trump in gold lettering across it. I'm assuming that one's going to be a hand wash only to keep the the Trump lettering on it. So,
Brahma, you have to treat that with care. My
yep,
name my name should be cleaned reverently every time you drink from it.
only
And
wash the inside of the cup, never the
and
out.
you can't drink from it till the Avs lose. Otherwise, you're gonna give them bad luck.
That's true. I can't change anything after last night because last night was a demolishing of the Dallas Stars. So pulled
is
the series even 2-2
is 70s rock fan on Epstein person list now, like where we have to watch
on the watch list.
the watch list to make sure he doesn't do any self harm.
I mean, he'll be listening this morning, but yeah, he was pretty negative on his team last night. But that's not unusual for 70s. I mean, he likes to say he's a realist, and what he really saw last night was Dallas can't hang with the Avs if the Avs are actually firing on all cylinders. And Landeskog, in his second game back after 3 years, managed to get a goal and an assist. So he's looking good. But that's last night's show. Let's get going with the politics for this week. So
Yep. So we've
where do we? Well, actually, why don't we start with Easter?
all right, yeah.
Um,
So Easter Sunday we get Easter, because Easter Sunday really set the table for the whole rest of the week. In the fact that JD Vance got an audience with Pope Francis on Easter Sunday, and as the Black Angel of Death, harbinger was the harbinger of Pope Francis moving on. Now, here's you want to get real dark. There are conspiracy theory circles within the internets that believe that moving Pope Francis on was all a ploy to be able to push Trump into a photo op with Zelensky.
yeah,
I mean,
I mean,
yeah,
to say nothing about the pneumonia he's had for like a month. It was definitely JD Vance that did him in. Some people out there are a little bit crazy sometimes, and they think we're all conspiracists.
yeah. I mean,
But
it's with somebody at that age level
the
with
memes
that
have been funny. But
yeah
yeah,
with with that level of stuff. It is not. I've been around it working in healthcare. Like, you'll have a person who's elderly, who's been fighting something, who will seem completely good to go and visit with people and do all that, and then the next day is or even
yeah, a
gone.
few hours of clarity
Yep.
before you
Yep.
just take the dive.
Yeah. So I mean, it's bad timing for Vance. So it is what it is. But so that sets the table, because that, when I'm in even though it's not a state, the Vatican, the Catholic Church, is treated like a major head of state passing
Right.
when the Pope goes. So that's where, and Trump actually wasn't necessarily required, but determined he was going to go to the funeral. So
Correct.
yeah, so he's that was kind of a last minute change. So that ended up upending kind of the plans for the week that they had. So the Easter Sunday. So they did that on. Francis meets Vance on Easter, passes away later that evening,
Right.
and Trump does the Easter egg roll on Monday. It's always the Monday after Easter.
Easter observed, maybe,
Yep,
even though that's not a thing.
it's not.
I
Yeah, it's not a
I did want
holiday.
to point out just how different one year makes, and I realize it was a date, not necessarily trying to confiscate the day, but Easter last year we had the Trans Day of Visibility, rear all the crap around that, and sure, it's because it was a date on the calendar, not because it was technically trying to go over Easter, but it happened to be on Easter last year. And the administration made a huge deal, not about Easter, but about the Trans Day of Visibility. And this year, we've got Trump going out there on Easter and basically just saying, he is risen, Christ was resurrected. And that's what Easter is actually about. So just the difference a year makes in Easter was also something that I thought was very telling, because we also had a meeting Tuesday of a whole bunch of major people from the administration to discuss the anti-Christian bias in the federal government and how the government is going to be reversing many of the things that Biden had put out there as far as federal government rules and regulations that were going against Christians specifically. Like, let's see, there was soldiers who were told you cannot homeschool while you're deployed overseas, that kind of stuff. So there were a number of things. Many different department heads came forward with examples from the Biden administration of how it was actually built into the federal government to be anti-Christian. So that was That was Tuesday, and you were going to continue with the rest of the week.
Yeah, so we proceed there. Then the arrangements start getting made for who's attending the funeral, what's going to get done, what the travel plans are. We also in and this is it's interesting timing. This week was also the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which is why all the White House reporters were distracted because their nerd prom was coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So even though you have all these world events going on, they're still focused on that and making sure that Trump is, being held to account and they get to have a whole party to talk about it. We have some more tariff fallout coming this week. We have China canceling pork orders, even though they own Smithfield Pork, so they're effectively canceling orders to themselves,
And
which is
China sending ships over with zero things on the ships. I'm
yep.
not sure what the point is, but sure.
Got to keep those crews working. You don't want to have
Yeah.
have when you have millions and millions of unemployed males under the age of 40. That's how revolutions happen. Uh,
Yep.
so
And that is exactly what China's afraid of at this point is
yeah,
unemployment.
we had we can talk a little more about Ukraine and the peace, the movement towards peace there. We had some positive verbal indications through statements, and then we had a couple flare ups with missiles getting shot off. We have Zelensky shooting off his mouth earlier.
Yeah, Zelensky and Trump met while at the Pope's funeral.
And Zelensky was doing damage control on that, so we can move to a
He's doing
specific.
damage control, but he's also damaging even more because Zelensky is out there still trying to tell Trump that Crimea should revert back to Ukraine, even though Crimea has been gone for 10 years now. It
Yeah,
hasn't been
and
under Ukrainian control for 10 years,
yeah,
and that's still what he's trying to take as a hard line in this. The guy is just delusional.
yeah,
I,
Zelensky is he came out and he put the kibosh on it. And when he got really upset because Rubio, Vance, in statements they were making on their various trips and interviews, made it
mhm.
abundantly clear that the U.S. position is that Crimea is all the other territory we can try to negotiate about, but 100% Crimea is
Crimea is
gone.
gone.
It's
Yeah,
Russian now. Just deal with it. Trump has even said it like like Crimea, they've got, in addition to taking it, which, and he always points it out, which happened under Obama. It happened under Obama, Brahma. It wasn't President Trump that Crimea got taken. So, but he also points out that Russia has their massive naval base there. They are not giving it up. It's been effectively controlled by Russian military since 2014, 2015,
yeah,
roughly.
it's been over 10 years.
It's not going back. They are 100% locked in. So Crimea is a non, like Zelensky saying that is, and you'll hear this term a lot when it comes to like legislation in Congress. What his position is, a poison pill, by not coming off of that spot saying that is a hard line for Ukraine. There's no deal that can go get made.
And I'm not sure if Zelensky is just an idiot or if he thinks he's trying to play Trump's game where you start with a ridiculous position and then work your way back from it. I'm leaning more towards Zelensky as an idiot.
Oh no, Zelensky is worried. I mean, the Azov battalion, they weren't sending their people to the front line. They're becoming the most powerful group in Ukraine. And so if you're Zelensky, those guys are hardline, full on. I mean, they wear a certain double consonant logo on their uniforms. So uh
Yeah.
and it doesn't mean Secret Service. So if you're Zelensky, Azov Battalion has been running your martial law system for the past couple years.
The one that is keeping Zelensky from having a new election
Yeah,
because
so I think
him being
Zelensky.
in power may be the only thing keeping him alive at the
Yeah,
moment.
so you've got, and there's two things that can be happening at the same time. It's keeping him alive, so the Azov Battalion doesn't get rid of him as useless, and
Right.
it's also making him so much money. So much
Correct.
money. Like he is him and all the other Ukraine oligarchs have been skimming off the top of the US largesse, the European money, whatever. It is well known now that even the equipment we're sending, 80% of it is ending up being sold on the black market, not going to the front
Rather than
lines,
being used in the
not being
actual war
used.
that it's designated for.
Yep. So it's not it's we're in a bad situation. Trump knows it too. Like that he said before several times that one of the things that may need to happen to get peace would be to get a new election, get Zelensky out, get somebody in there who wants to make a deal. I still
Right.
think that peace happens within the next 3 months, and the peace is going to look like Crimea and most of the Donbass and eastern region that Russia controls becoming effectively Russian. Whether that mean I think Crimea officially gets ceded to Russia, and I think
Yes.
those other ones become
Russian territory.
independent Russian territory. Like it's a territory that
Almost
is
a neutral zone.
like I mean the way you think of like American Samoa, right? It's a
Right.
U.S. territory, but it's not a state. Like Russia is officially the protector and controller of the territory, but it's not official part of the Russian country yet. So that way, and they'll probably make some kind of neutral buffer zones, a la North Korea, South Korea, where
Yeah.
they're going to come up with some kind of
A
line
demilitarized line.
that can be patrolled probably by a European, not NATO, but European peacekeeping force, most likely manned by French, English,
And
German,
as we've said
whatever.
before, absolutely no NATO membership for Ukraine.
Correct. Yeah, that's going to be the
That's the
deal too.
non-starter on Putin's side.
Yeah, I mean, I think Putin does. See, what's interesting is Putin doesn't care if they're in the EU, in the financial part of it, or anything. What he couldn't abide was the NATO membership. So, I think that'll be how they do that. So that's my thought on the Ukraine update. I think Putin after Zelensky made there's always an act and a consequence equal and opposite force, right? Zelensky comes out and
Hmm.
says Crimea is Ukraine, we're never giving it up. Putin shoots missiles into Kiev and hits, basically showing if I want to, I can strike you.
Right.
I'm being I know that people think, there's a lot of military analysts who don't buy this. Russia is still fighting restrained versus what they could do.
Well, yeah,
They're
any nuclear power is fighting restrained when they're not using their full force.
Well, they have other options they could do. There are reactors. I mean, Ukraine, famous home of Chernobyl.
Chernobyl. Yep.
There's nuclear reactors that could be targeted. There's a major dam that's a hydroelectric power source that could be targeted.
And there was some of that in the beginning. And
They,
some of that may have been by us and Joe Biden with targeting certain pipelines and whatnot.
yeah, just like like somehow we, like I love the best was the Russians blew up the Nord pipeline themselves. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of things where the news has come out and said that the Russians did something that directly uh, badly affected the Russians, and not everything is a false flag in this war. So, but yeah, that's our update on Ukraine, Russia, and kind of kind of Easter at the same time. So, do
Yeah,
you have anything
so
else on the? Well, we've got the funeral. We could show the pictures that
yeah,
we were
let's
looking at
do.
beforehand.
Yeah, I'm going to share that because I think just to circle back, Pope Francis' funeral was yesterday. It was a
Hmm.
major international event. The press couldn't help but taking a jibe, trying to say that Trump was breaking protocol because he's a big, bad, evil merc, and he wore a blue suit instead of the Vatican requested black suit, black tie as the attire for men attending the service. And
Right.
so Fortune magazine ran with this headline and other places picked it up. So what you're going to see on the picture I'm sharing is on the left is how they did it. You can see they cropped the picture so it looks like Trump is just the outlier and he's such a terrible boorish human not listening to Vatican protocol. On the right is the wider shot where you see all of the other people attending this funeral and half of them are wearing blue suits, including if you go
including
one,
Joe
two,
Biden 4 rows back.
three, 4 rows back, Joe Biden in his blue suit with a blue tie. If you, it's almost aside from the shade of blue, it's the exact same attire except he's wearing his dumbass aviator sunglasses,
Yep.
which I would think is also. I mean, I guess it's outside, so sunglasses are allowed. But
Well, there's lots of people wearing sunglasses.
yeah, but he makes this such an he made that such a prominent thing for him. It just bothers me.
I
So
mean,
yeah,
it is a different picture, but they did crop it deceptively because there are people on in the picture on the right that are not on the left. But I mean, it just goes to show that the narrative that Trump was the only person wearing a blue suit is absolutely stupid and completely made up by the news networks yet again.
they can't resist trying to take shots at him for. I mean, and if when he doesn't do something that they can try to twist easily, they come in and they make up crazy stuff. Oh, looks like you got some
Yeah.
got a super chat.
So $5 from Jeremiah Hembry. If I remember correctly, it was Russia who wanted to become part of NATO, and wasn't it President Bill Clinton who told them no? NATO was originally set up to be a direct counter to Russia. Um, the thing is, Ukraine was never going to be allowed to be in NATO. That was in multiple treaties and multiple agreements between Russia
Mhm.
and the U.S. specifically, but also NATO.
It goes back
Um,
to the when the Soviet Union fell, Ukraine, because of its proximity to to Europe, was where Russia has strategically placed a large amount of their nuclear arsenal. Ukraine, at the end, with the Soviets falling when they became an independent, state, I believe had the third.
had to give up all of their
No,
nukes.
they had the third largest arsenal because they took possession of it
Right.
of nuclear weapons in the world. They were behind Russia. It was United States, Russia, Ukraine. Everybody, like, every other Western power, like France, England, that had nuclear weapons, didn't even sniff what Ukraine had just by what was left by Russia in their territory. So this was a big deal. Russia and the United States prioritized denuclearizing Ukraine in the 90s. And Ukraine didn't want to give them up because they said, hey, if we give up our nuclear weapons, we
It's
can
the
be
Russian deterrent.
it's what keeps Russia away from us. We'll be invaded. Russia made the agreement with the United States and Ukraine that it was a trilateral agreement. Ukraine gives their nuclear weapons back to Russia. Russia agrees to preserve the borders of Ukraine as they were drawn at the time.
Hmm.
United States agrees to provide military support to Ukraine and defend Ukraine's territorial integrity. But, and this was the big but, Ukraine agreed that they would never join NATO and that they would maintain neutrality. They wouldn't join NATO. They wouldn't get in with Europe. They wouldn't become a base that could aggressively attack Russia. That was the key for Russia making that deal too.
Right.
And then they started breaking that deal, and they've been breaking that deal since, like, and this is something because
All sides have.
Putin had talked about that since 2000, where he was not happy with some of the stuff happening in Ukraine and the movement because he couldn't stop it, but NATO had kept expanding
And what
like
was happening directly before this war broke out was Kamala Harris and I can't remember who the secretary
Victoria
was.
Nuland was the
Newland.
other big player.
Yeah, had gone over to Ukraine, and Biden's administration was specifically pushing for Ukraine to be joining NATO. And that's really what set this whole thing off. Putin had drawn the red line that Ukraine will not be in NATO, and Biden and the administration just kept pushing it, and that's where we get the starting point for this conflict.
Yep.
But
So
NATO was always supposed to be post-Soviet, a wall in Europe against Russian aggression. Russia was never going to be in NATO because it was set to be directly aligned against Russia.
mhm. So I mean, that's
But
it's a
thank you
good
for the
question.
$5, Jeremiah.
And it is, I do believe, early on when Russia fell and Yeltsin took over and they were doing the full détente kind of stuff with the Clinton administration,
Mm-hmm.
there was some people who floated in think tanks the idea that Russia would join NATO, and that would be the ultimate evidence that the Cold War was really over, that they were really a Western ally now, etc.
In reality, NATO should have just been dissolved at the fall of
Yes,
the Soviet Union.
yeah, but it didn't go anywhere. That kind of thought, that was pie in the sky think tank kind of stuff where you'd see a white paper on it. It wasn't a realist
Right.
kind of thing. But it happened. We are where we're at. Yeah. So the Pope finished his funeral. It went. I mean, it was interesting. They did. So they seat people based on alphabetical name of the country,
Sure.
and what's interesting is the United States actually ends up being one of the first countries, which is why Trump gets in the front row because of I believe they use French, and because it's the United States, it becomes like anyway,
Lay
lay
United
United
States.
States. So they get the what's the one thing that we're, and that's how they sat everybody as leaders of state. Where things got a little weird is they put Vladimir Zelensky in the front row a few seats down from Trump, and Ukraine is just Ukraine, so alphabetically he should have been several rows back,
Right.
but they broke protocol for him. So like forget about a blue suit. They were making a, like, the people who organized this were making a point of trying to put Zelensky in there with Trump.
Right. Put him on the same level. Also, Biden was where he was at because he's being treated as a foreign dignitary, not as a head of state in any way at this point.
Yeah, I mean, good for Joe even remembering where he was for a few minutes. Good.
I don't know
Uh,
that he did.
I'm sure Dr. Jill told him that I'm here to meet the Pope.
Remember when I crapped in his presence?
That was some holy shit. Yeah, so it was there it is. Le Atatas Unas de America. Yeah, it's less. So I think they dropped the less, so it's Etatas Unas. So we end up being a uh, a front row country. So, um, I guess he changed his name. I thought that was Randall Orton. So, all right. What other
Yeah,
time? So
Canadian Roland as Randall Orser.
yeah,
It's
like,
Canadian Roland the Wretched. It's a
gotcha.
Comics Division channel joke.
Aha, aha. All right. So we have, so yeah, Pope Francis. Otherwise, Pope Francis' funeral was about the same as it always goes for when a pope passes away. He lays in state. They move on. Now we've already started moving into the controversy over the College of Cardinals.
The Conclave.
Pope Francis had changed some rules. Now, cardinals over the age of 80, I don't believe, are allowed to vote in the conclave.
Well, Pope Francis had also done what leftists do and progressives do when they're in power and had stacked a whole bunch of the cardinal positions with progressive thinking cardinals as well. So don't know that it's going to get better in the Catholic Church
There
with the
is,
next
all
pope.
right. Well, there's a way to do it, and this is why I'm hopeful, because it seems like a lot of the conservative Catholic cardinals have started aligning maybe with Cardinal Sarah.
Yeah.
Just like, I mean, it's a lot like American politics.
It's very much like American
In
politics.
order for the conservative to have the route for victory, you have to pretty much have a unified conservative
You
party
got to
with
run the whole table.
for
Yeah.
one guy. Like if you have infighting where you split your ticket early, because the way the conclave works is it's almost like a Hall of Fame vote. If you don't have enough ballots, you get dropped off, and only the people and only the higher ballot total people get to move on to the next
It's,
phase.
it's almost like ranked choice voting, but
Yeah.
not.
So, so in this case, if the conservatives unify behind one candidate early, they can push that guy into the very late rounds while the leftist people are fighting with each other trying to
Get picked off one by
get
one.
picked, get be the one. And then by the time you're getting to that like binary choice when there's only two left, here's where you this is where you got a very similar vibe to American politics. If the unified conservatives have their candidate, by the time the leftist person gets in there, or I guess progressive, whatever phrase you want to do it, they will have made so many enemies from the candidates who didn't get to go through. You're going to have a lot of sour grapes people who are like, if I'm not going to get it, you're not going to get it, who might end up voting for the conservative one. I mean, there's a lot of,
It's possible. I'm not holding out hope, though.
there's also, and this is something people don't, it's the Catholic Church. So there's a history of it. There's deal making. You know, if you get to be Pope, you're going to take care of people. You're going to give them certain benefits, sweet assignments, all sorts of kind of things like that. The conclave is probably the oldest backroom deal wheeling and dealing that we still have operational in the world since it goes back, to the beginning of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Once you got past the martyr era, once it was the official Church of Ancient Rome, it's always been a power politics play of who's gonna get to be Pope. Now
Well,
you
power
can
politics within the church and within certain countries, because England had quite a bit of sway for a while in the church before there was some break off from the main Catholic Church. But yeah,
Uh, I mean, no
it's
more so than any other
we've had false
major
popes, we've
European
had
power.
all
We've had
kinds of crazy
schisms.
stuff. Mm-hmm.
Going back to the Eastern Empire when there was the schism, it all goes back, which eventually again became the Ottoman Empire. The Eastern Empire, which is Constantinople, that's where they had, that's where Greek Orthodoxy comes from. Like the Catholic Church shifted, cut down the middle with the Roman Empire, and they
Yep,
got to have their Pope and their religion and their church, and the Western Empire kept theirs, which was the official Pope as we know it now, the Vicar of Rome.
the Roman
So
Catholic Church.
yeah,
Yes,
so that's Greek Orthodox, Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox,
Eastern Orthodox,
for
because
Eastern
there's Russian
Orthodox.
Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, so Eastern Orthodox. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, so there's a lot of that kind of stuff. Yeah, yes, Eric, it is it all this stuff matters. There's a backstory to it, especially when you're talking about papal elections. So I think this is going to be really interesting to watch because a lot like sports, you tend to swing from one to the other. Like there's almost an overreaction when you have a really kind of populist pope or progressive pope, depending on what kind of pope you have, you tend to see a unified movement to move back against it that comes after that. We had Pope John Paul, then you got Pope Benedict, who was
Then you got a communist.
hardcore, like as hardcore conservative as you were, and then you swing it around and you get the crazy communist Marxist Jesuit
Mm-hmm.
form, God rest his soul, Pope Francis. So I think we and don't all
And you still got a Pope Emeritus out there.
yeah. Yeah, is Benedict still alive? He hasn't passed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's still alive.
Yeah. So with in this case, there's also
Eric K for $1.99. Hopefully, this Pope will actually be a Catholic.
yeah. So in that, if that's what you want, don't vote for a South American Jesuit. They are the
Yeah,
Jesuits got infiltrated within South America a long time ago by communists and Marxists, and so you're not going to want that.
And as a Protestant, I just watch this out of or basically due to the political influence that the church has and what the political influence that the Pope has. I don't have any skin in the game in this one, except for the way some of the world actually follows whatever the Pope and the church are saying.
Yeah.
So we've got that coming up.
But
That
I wouldn't
it's
be
typically
surprised.
18 days, 18 to 20 days that there's the mourning period or grief period before the conclave actually starts the voting, right?
They make
That's
up their own rules.
tradition
There's tradition. Yeah. But
before they're actually locked in and
yeah,
start the actual votes with
before
the black smoke, white smoke, that kind of crap.
exactly. And don't leave out the politics in the fact that I think that there was a large debate the last time whether it was the time they had a pope from South America or a
Hmm.
pope from Africa, because those are the two really large segments of the Catholic growth and Catholic population. South America is probably the most overtly devout Catholic region in the world, and
Yeah.
Africa is the largest growth sector of the Catholic Church, where they're making the largest percentage gains in terms of worship. I
So you're
believe
saying we may get a DEI elected pope?
it's politics. The like for like you know where you're
I
not
know.
going to see one is America, because Catholic Church is in general decline in the United States. There for a long time, people would always be like, when is the first, like they thought in the middle of the 20th century it was a matter of time for the Catholic Church to get a pope that was American. But then the Catholic Church numbers just kept dwindling. The money coming in from the Catholic churches in the United States dwindles. Money is influence. If you're a cardinal from a place that generates lots and lots of income, you get a lot of power. you know,
Yeah.
so I think, again, my if I had to place my bet, I would say right now my hope would be Cardinal Sarah, but my bet would probably be somebody. It would be the field. Like if it's Cardinal
Right.
Sarah or the field, I'd put the money on the
I
field.
put the money on the field.
Yep. All right. So
Well, should we so the main title of the show was Judges Can't Break the Law? Question mark.
yeah,
So
yeah. Let me find.
let's so we've got two situations. We've got the Milwaukee judge Hannah Dugan, who basically decided that she should walk an illegal out the back door of her courtroom, through the back
through
area,
through
and
the
out the
jury
back
zone.
door.
Yeah.
Yeah, and out the back door of the court itself to keep ICE from being able to get to a guy. She has been arrested. And then you've got New Mexico Judge Joel, what is it, Cano, um, who is literally housing a Trende Argua, I can't ever say that one, gang member in his
TDA.
house with him.
Just do
Yeah.
TDA.
So the question is no one is above the law a dead narrative at this point? Because I would think that it is, the way the left and the Democrats are whining that judges can't be arrested. Judges by rule can't break the law is the argument that some of them seem to be making, which is absolutely absurd. There's been judges who have been arrested almost every year, for decades, for doing things that are above the law. So I don't know where they think this is going to take them. So
Well, yeah,
let's
and
bring this up real quick.
yeah, this was the perp walk for the Wisconsin judge. You'll notice they had to use two sets of handcuffs because she's a
A
big girl.
robust woman.
She's a robust lady. She's built Midwest solid. So
Corn fed.
she's corn fed, and they perp walked her out on purpose. Like this is one of the things I thought was the funniest. Where like, they staged this. They didn't need to do that. They could have given her the courtesy XYZ. And I was like, F you. They did no
I seem
knock.
to recall them arresting a president.
Yeah, well, they did no knock SWAT raids on January 6th, people who were going to be arrested for parading.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not even, I'm not talking about the people they thought had assaulted officers. These were the people who they knew just walked around and then left sometimes within a matter of minutes.
Yeah,
Where they
grandma walking within the velvet ropes.
and they would bring to bear full on federal SWAT teams along with local SWAT, where they would break down these people's home, doors in the middle, like at 4 a.m. with no knock warrants to do full Gestapo tactics. They called CNN when Roger Stone's home was being raided in the no knock pre sunrise
Yeah,
raid.
to make sure that the news
The,
vans were there to
yeah,
catch it.
and then they still had the ability to take him out the back door and put him in a custody. They made sure they did the perp walk. They want the perp walk on camera because they know it's about sending the message, right? You send it, you show it visually. And that's why I like what Trump is doing, because these people are being lawless. It is important to send the message that lawlessness gets caught and dealt with, but it's also important to show them that visually you are going to be getting the same treatment you gave us. There is no more of we're breaking the taboos. This is stuff that's been done to us for a long time on the conservative side. In the
Yeah,
one of the craziest articles last week that I saw was from I think it was David French, who is always obnoxious, but he was warning against using the IRS to target people
right.
because it would be such a taboo breaking thing. It would break all the like it's I was like, really? It's amazing. I've never heard of the IRS targeting people before, ever. When
Learner.
did like even though Lois Lerner was charged with like it's she admitted it in congressional testimony. If your organization had the word patriot in it or Tea Party, they blocked you. They targeted you. They made
Yeah.
you go through audits beyond regular stuff. This
In
is
some
not, yeah.
cases, you were labeled domestic terrorists.
Now so what this lady did in Wisconsin, Judge Dugan, there was an ICE representative who showed up in the court for because they had the detainer on this dude
Yep.
for doing some bad things again. I believe it was domestic violence, drunk driving, etc. He stood up in court and said, "I'm gonna, I have a valid warrant for this man. I'm gonna, take custody of him when this hearing is done. I'm just letting you know he's going into custody."
You're going to release them to federal
The
custody.
judge then proceeded to argue with him that he had no legal right to be there. Which God help him, we've got the transcript. The federal officer was like, "I do. I have. This is a public space. These warrants can be validly executed in any public space. I'm giving you the courtesy of letting you know I'm taking him." And that's when she yelled at him to clear the court, to get out of the court. And so they moved him into the public hallway where he was going to wait for this to be done. Now, what Brahm is saying is then she had the defense attorney still sat at his table, but she moved this illegal to the jury box and then had this guy helped him. She walked him out to exit him through the jury exit, away from the public exit, away from where the people were waiting to detain him, and tried to walk him out a back exit.
Yeah.
Now,
Tried to give him an escort away
yeah.
from an ICE detainer.
Now, a lot of people are trying to go, well, that was a public exit anyway. It may have had technically, it may have been technically a public exit where it had an exit sign, but this was not used by anybody but juries going
Yeah,
in and
because
out of,
typically you keep
yeah,
your jury pool on
segregated
different
from it.
elevators or stairwells, different rooms, so that they don't have a chance of running into the other attorneys or somebody that they might be presiding over a case for.
Yeah, so she facilitated, as Gojira is saying, she facilitated and aided and abetted his evasion of a federal officer. That would be, in this case, it's effectively no different from knowing someone is a fugitive from justice, like a escaped convict, and
Harboring a fugitive.
and
Yeah.
harboring them and helping them get away from a law enforcement officer. You have aided and abetted a against a lawful detainment. So yeah, they're fired. They got her. Now the one in New Mexico is even arguably worse because that guy had
Yes.
the TDA person living in his house for months and
Knowingly. I mean,
knowingly,
knowing
and
what he was.
and when they were coming to take him into custody, he took the dude's phone and destroyed it so they couldn't get the evidence he knew of on the phone, including photos of victims. Allegedly, one of the photos had victims with heads removed. And this judge knew enough about what was on that phone to want to destroy it so they couldn't get that evidence. So clearly
Just
this
getting
dude was
dangerously close to treasonous acts.
this guy was comfortable enough with these cartel criminals to see the pictures of the headless victims on his phone and know that was there.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, I mean, this one I think is more I'm not gonna this is one where I don't think this is based on being liberal. I think this is more a classic case of being bought and
Being
owned
bought.
by cartels,
Yes.
which I mean he's a Democratic judge, which is not surprising, but I think that we need to be aware that whether they are got a D or an R next to their name along that southern border zone, there's probably a lot of because he's a local judge, he's not a federal judge.
Right. He's a magistrate judge.
Yeah, he's a magistrate. I will guarantee you that regardless of party, if we start really looking into it and following the money, there's going to be a ton of local government, whether it's elected,
Corruption.
sheriffs, magistrates, judges. These guys are all going to be, we're going to find tons across all party lines that have been bought and sold.
Would not
So,
shock any of us. I mean, half
yeah.
of half of the TV shows that involve the cartel have told us that for years.
Yeah. I mean, that's and that's something cartel people have said, like, as a threat, like,
We own your politicians, we
you,
own your police, we own your judges.
yeah, don't start the war with us because we're way deeper in your system than you think. Which is also what China was saying, that we own so much of your system
Right. But
that it
at
doesn't
some
matter.
point, you got to rip off the Band-Aid, just like with everything else that the Trump administration is doing. And Holman's not going to be deterred by a whole bunch of corrupt politicians and judges. He's going to keep doing the job either way. Holman has been probably maybe the most effective person in the Trump administration so far.
Yeah, and this goes into, and I've got the clip from Marco Rubio this morning on Meet the Press, because they everything we do against in terms of immigration enforcement is just being misreported on purpose. In
Mm-hmm.
this case, the new headline they wanted to go with this week was that we had deported American children, U.S. citizen American children.
Yeah, they're
And
throwing anything up there to see what sticks at
yeah,
this
and
point.
so Rubio just completely obliterates that.
Headline, that's a misleading headline. Okay, 3 U.S. citizens, ages 4, 7, and 2, were not deported. Their mothers, who are legally in this country, were deported. The children went with their mothers. If those children are U.S. citizens, they can come back into the United States if there's their father or someone here who wants to assume them. But ultimately, who was deported was their mothers who were here illegally. The children just went with their mothers. But it wasn't like, you guys make it sound like ICE agents kicked down the door and grabbed the 2-year-old and threw him on an airplane. That's misleading.
Yeah.
That's just not true.
Just to be clear, because I do want to get to the overhaul at the State Department, is it the U.S. policy to deport children, even U.S. citizens, with their families, and I hear what you're saying, without due process? Just to be very clear there.
Well, no. Again, if someone's in this country unlawfully, illegally, that person gets deported. If that person is with a 2-year-old child or has a 2-year-old child and says, I want to take my child with me, well, then you have 2 choices. You can say, yes, of course you can take your child, whether they're a citizen or not, because it's your child. Or you can say, yes, you can go, but your child must stay behind. And then your headlines would read, U.S. holding hostage 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 7-year-old while mother deported. So the parents make that choice. I imagine those 3 U.S. citizen children have fathers here in the United States.
Yeah.
They can stay with their father. That's up to them.
assuming the mother knows who the dad is. Just throwing that out there.
Their family
Just
to
one
decide
little
where the
barb.
children go. Children go with their parents. Parents decide where their children go.
Right.
The U.S. deported their mothers who were illegally in America.
And Gojira went exactly where I was going
Elian
to go
Gonzalez.
with it. Elian Gonzalez and Janet Reno sending the SWAT team in to remove one Cuban child back to Cuba, and the national news that we had for days to weeks on that. Back when the Democrats apparently had a problem with illegals, especially, well, Cuban illegals. But yeah, that was exactly where my mind went with it too, Goj.
Yeah, and that's why. And I mean, I've said it before, but Rubio has been my most pleasant surprise in the administration
He's
because,
been highly effective at communicating it.
I mean, taking on the State Department is not a small task because the State Department is a den of snakes, all and has been populated for 50 years with people who are not America first at all.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, he's effectively and properly communicating that we are not deporting the U.S. And again, once that birthright citizen case finally makes its way through, there may be some different opinions on if these kids are U.S. citizens. Even
Sure.
if that gets done, I'm pretty sure they're not going to make it retroactive.
It won't be
They're
retroactive.
They're going to say
Yeah.
it's going forward. But yeah, with him making it very yeah, these are they weren't deported. But what do you want us to do? Do you want us to strip the children from their mothers who want to take them with them?
Well, it's exactly what Holman had said in that interview on either CNN or MSNBC months ago when they were like, well, what are you going to do? Just deport these people? Or, what do you do with somebody who's living here with somebody who is an American citizen? And he's like, how do you not break up the families? And he said, well, you tell them they can all go. I mean, if you want to keep the family together, they're perfectly capable of leaving along with the person getting deported.
And Homan's other answer was, we do family separation every day. We send someone to jail.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think that people are getting separated when a parent goes to jail? It happens all the time. It happens every day to American citizens,
to actual American citizens.
And that it's just I mean, it's the cost of a parent who breaks the law.
That is kind of the definition of losing your freedom.
Now,
you break
in this
the law,
case,
you lose some freedom.
Yeah, in this case, what the Trump administration is doing, my understanding is when there's kids involved like that, they actually spring to make them. They're not being put on like shackled flights. They're getting nice, relative again accommodations, type business class type things, whatever. They're making sure that they're not being sent down to like CCOT in El Salvador when this stuff happens. But it is what it is. I mean, if you have a child here, but and these people, I believe, also broke other laws in addition to being here illegally as women. They were also, I think, whether it's DUI or any other criminal activity, they had other laws that were broken.
Something on top of border jumping.
And I'm sorry, yeah, it sounds crass to say but the problem is too big to not try to solve it because of these things that would be bad. Like, all things being equal, if we had no illegal immigration and the choice was we've got like one mom in the US illegally, and and she's got several American citizen kids married to an American, because I do think if she was with an American citizen father and they had those children, they would be considered US citizens at birth, because with an American citizen parent, they are subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
Right.
So, I mean, let's just say for the sake of argument and assume that's what the case is, so there's not even a gray area about them being US citizens from birth. What do you want to do? Like, what do we hold up? Well, let's say she murdered somebody. She like straight up DUI'd, knowingly, ended up killing running into a minivan that was driven by another mother with several children. Am I not supposed to want her removed from the United States after she serves her criminal penalty in jail?
And the kids wouldn't be going into the jail with her.
Yeah, so that's there. Tom Homan had it right. Anybody who commits crimes runs the risk of being separated from their children.
Yeah.
That's part of the risk of that's part of the societal penalty we are assigning to criminal activity. Because if we don't make criminal activity have negative consequences people worry about, everybody would be committing crime left and right because it would be naturally easy to do with no penalty.
Which is also why leftists specifically have tried to say over and over and over, well, coming across the border, being an illegal immigrant and coming across the border that way, it's just a civil violation. It's not a criminal violation. It is a criminal violation.
Yes, it
You
is a
have
criminal.
broken the law.
They
There
tried to
have been
make
many
it a
times
civil
where it has
violation.
been quoted exactly which article it is, and the left just can't accept that. They're just going to keep trying to put out there that it's a civil violation. They're not actually doing anything illegal. They are. I mean, it's breaking the law. Everybody knows it. The left just can't admit it.
Yep. I think the movement against the lawless judges taking as a part outgrowth of genuine immigration enforcement is a long time coming. I look forward to hopefully rooting out the corrupt public officials on both sides of the aisle that are being paid by cartel, Tren de Agua, whoever money to facilitate this, because I do think that there are probably whole border towns that are bought and paid for government wise to allow things to go through. So Trump federalizing a lot of that border territory all the way
Mm-hmm.
from California to Texas and putting the US military there is going to probably be it's going to be interesting to see which local officials put up the biggest fight about that, and you'll know which ones are bought and paid for.
It's funny because it's a lot like what is happening in the show Landman. I mean, what did they do to try to dissuade the cartel from doing anything? They call in the military and have them start running um, exercises out in the desert where the cartel was operating, and it's kind of being echoed in reality right now.
Yep. Now, that was a big chunk of the week. Tariffs are continuing. I mean, I know we've covered that pretty extensively. Then I think we're on the verge of having our first deals announced in the
Mm-hmm.
tariff fights. My guess is still India, South Korea, and Japan as the leading candidates to have the first bilateral deals done. If I wouldn't be surprised if it goes Japan, India, or India, Japan, like one or two. That those would be the first two. First with Japan because Trump has a lot of respect and love for the Japanese culture, and specifically their former Prime Minister Abe,
The one
who
who
was
got gunned
assassinated,
down.
because he was one of Trump's staunchest allies, and they had a really great relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think India is on the blocks as a first round pick, so to speak, because they are one of the countries immediately positioned to take over a lot of manufacturing from China.
Yes.
And if you're Trump and you know that you want to reshore goods, but you can't do it in the immediate term until because you need that second leg of your policy, which is the tax policy to be done, you're going to make the deal in the short term to get it in a country that is not your mortal enemy at the moment, which would be India, because they have the manufacturing capability, the labor force to be able to start pumping out goods fairly quick. We get the molds over, get new molds made, and they can start doing stuff. Because Vietnam's going to take longer because they have country of origin issues they have to work out because they are basically a
Yes.
middleman for China. But India hasn't been that as much. India under Modi has wanted the manufacturing for themselves, and they also distrust China. So they do trust but verified with China on deals. They share again a large land border with China that has had um, hot firefights in the last decade between
Right.
Chinese and Indian forces. And also the relationship with Vance, because India is very happy that Vance, who's married to an Indian woman and has, you know, mixed Indian children, is the possible next president, and they like the idea of having a special relationship as a result of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
And the
thing.
World Bank had its meetings, what the spring meetings just in the last week or so, and came out and basically said, you all need to make deals with Trump as early as you can to keep the global economic stability in place. So, yeah, even the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund are desperately begging all these countries to come to the table and negotiate as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and one of my favorite stories is out of the EU, where they are genuinely concerned about the idea that China will be dumping cheap goods into the European Union and the impact it could
So
have on
they're
their
fine with it happening
manufacturing
to
and their
us.
economy. Yeah, they just don't want it. And it's like, hey, it's crazy. It's, everybody else in the world is arguing that the US shouldn't be doing this, but when China's threatening to just dump all their cheap goods into their zone, then oh my god, no, that'll destroy our manufacturing base and hurt our economy and our workers. So no, we don't want that.
I mean, it's the same attitude they've got when, you have a natural disaster here, nobody helps pay for it. When you have a natural disaster anywhere else in the world, the Americans are the ones that are donating their money and resources to help get that country back on its feet. But it's the same type of thing. The EU, they have no problem when somebody's dealing with us in a bad way. They have a problem with anything that we do that might directly affect them in any way. Eric K for $1.99. China keeps stealing Indian water and land.
Yeah, so
Yeah, China is not a good actor.
they're not. I mean, they build artificial islands to take over the South China Sea. I mean, they're doing a
Yep.
lot of stuff. So I think once the first of the country's deals gets announced, it's going to start a cascade kind of deals that are going to get made. There's going to be countries that take a lot longer because their country of origin issues.
Yeah.
Trump is like Trump. Trump already tried this. This is again a good example of Trump learning lessons from term one. He used tariffs. He made deals with China and thought they would work. And what China did was create basically shell countries where they would ship goods, have the labels switched out. Instead of saying made in China, they say made in Vietnam. And then they would go into the US outside of the tariffs that were against China. But they were still being made and bought and paid for through manufacturing in China.
Right.
Trump learned that. He's not an idiot. So there's a reason Vietnam and these other places are being highlighted for those country of origin issues. That's not as big an issue with India, Japan, etc. It is a
And that's
problem in Mexico and Canada, though. So that's
and
those
that's where we
countries.
were saying that Trump is going to be asking different things from different countries. I mean, the deals that he's going to be negotiating are going to be based on what we need specifically from that country to take place in order for us to lift the tariffs. It's not going to be, you come to the table and we just zero out the tariffs between both countries. Some of the countries, like Australia, as Grant has pointed out many times, didn't have any tariffs on us, but they wouldn't let some of our goods go in, and they had the country of origin issue going on
Yeah.
with China as well.
Yep.
Those things are going to be the things that those countries are going to have to change in order to get back in the good graces. So, the negotiating is going to be interesting to kind of see what comes of it, because each country is going to have to negotiate independently of everybody else to what Trump wants from their country specifically to happen.
And the other great thing about a bilateral agreement is once it's reached, if a country starts cheating on that agreement, you don't have to go through some massively convoluted multilateral checks and balance system like the World Trade Organization. There's going to be there's going to be mechanisms within each bilateral agreement where each country could take action to suspend, shut down, tariff, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And since these will be bilateral agreements, it's going to make it easier to identify and deal with any issues that come up if China starts trying to do end rounds with new countries. If somehow China, like say we make a deal with Japan or South Korea, and they start using Japan and South Korea for an end round, we have bilateral agreements now that we can use and just shut down those agreements with those countries and say, because I know Trump will have clauses in there where it'll say if you are identified as having country of origin manufacturing issues, we can immediately like rubber band in the tariffs
Yeah,
that we
just
had.
put an embargo on it,
Yep.
or
So
the tariffs again. Yeah,
yeah,
either way.
so my I would think that again, we're the trade agreements aren't something that that are, you know, you can negotiate like really quickly, but we are moving fairly quickly. Like we did Liberation Day at the beginning of April. It's April 27th now. I think by the end of May is where we have 2 to 3 major agreements
Well, we're
announced and
coming up
done.
on the end of the 30-day pause
Yep.
for the countries that came to the table. So
Yep.
we should start seeing some stuff pretty soon, would be
Yeah,
the guess.
and it's going to work exactly as intended. Because here's all right. So for some of this, like I mentioned, China, as they're trying to, you know, they're canceling their largest pork order from American farmers since COVID. Um, they own Smithfield Pork, which is the largest pork producer in the United States. So they're canceling their own orders. What that's going to do, and this is even though you know, for farm, I'm sure Trump will do things to take care of the individual farmers. It's going to lower prices for the American consumer because if these orders aren't getting filled by Chinese consumers that we have to ship overseas where they're paying more, there all of a sudden there will be more product available in the American market. So China is a large consumer of American farm output. If they start cutting their nose to spite their face by decreasing purchase of American farm goods, the American consumer will see lower prices at the grocery store, which is completely counter to what you've heard about what tariffs will do. Because in this case, instead of exporting, they're going to have to stay within the US to sell their goods. There's a shelf life on them. And
Right.
so the prices come down. Now, that
And
may
then you get
mean,
the energy prices coming down as well. And that also gets the goods prices to come down. So you've got multiple levers that they're pulling right now to try to get cost of goods to come down to a small degree at least. It's hard to reverse inflation. Once something's reached a price level, it's hard to get it to come back. But there are certain goods like food goods and energy that yes, you can get cost back under control to a degree.
so here's, I was actually talking with Slender about this the other day. This is one of the things where even I know it is a generally accepted economic principle as taught in major American educational institutions that deflation is worse for an economy than inflation. And I think that might be another thing where academics are very separate from the real world.
Well,
Deflation is
it's the
effect
same schools that are also teaching socialism is
yeah.
good. So,
Yeah, so deflation, another way to describe deflation would be increasing the value of the American dollar,
right.
meaning that $1 will buy has more purchasing power than it used to, so the price of goods can go down. S-
Which you could have that. You could also just have, with tax cuts and everything else, people keep or retain more of their money so they have more purchasing power even if the prices don't significantly come down. There's two ways of thinking on that is yes, you could try to get deflation to happen, which would bring the cost of goods down. You can also just have people retain more of their money. So if you've got an extra $12,000, $15,000 that you're keeping in your pocket instead of going to the federal government, then the cost of goods doesn't affect you in the same way it does when you're paycheck to paycheck, or whatever your situation is, you've got that extra money to be able to afford the goods at the prices that they're at. So I think the way they're trying to go is keeping more money in people's pockets while also trying to deflate to a degree. Deflation is just hard to accomplish sometimes.
Yeah, I think deflation is the reason deflation is considered bad, as best as I can really read into it, is because it impacts corporate profits and growth. Because if you have price deflation, meaning the power of the dollar is higher,
Hmm.
no one reads that. Like, you don't put that into your prospectus, right? You want a certain growth percentage. You want to say we were up 19% year over year. If your company goes from growing consistently between 15 and 20% in a time of inflation to suddenly only growing 5%, but because of the increased value of the dollar, that 5% allows you to purchase more. No
Right.
one
Along
cares
with
about.
interest rates coming down to where you can get more loans as a business and do
Yeah.
more things with that.
What I was going to say is, when you sell that to investors, a lot of investors are just going to look and be like, why'd your growth change from 17% to 5%? Your company's obviously not doing as well.
Right. Which is where we've said it before. And yeah, I guess we'll say it again. The economy is not the same as the stock market. It's not the same as what a major corporation's balance book looks like. The economy is a completely different animal and needs to be decoupled from the stock market in American way of thinking. Because what's good for the economy is rarely in today's age rarely good for the stock market as well. We felt a ton of pain during Biden's inflationary period, but the stock market felt none of it. The stock market did great during all that time. So for us regular Americans, sure, your 401k may look, not as good as it did, 3 or 4 years ago in the short run, but that's not what you actually feel in your pocketbook on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and if you can afford to buy a house, even though your 401k is down, you're going to have more long-term generational wealth access by purchasing a home and owning property than you do from anything from your
Yeah,
401k.
50% of Americans aren't involved in the stock market in any way. And the people who make money off the stock market for the most part are going to be that top 1 to 10% of earners in the country. So, it doesn't bother me when the stock market takes a few hits or corrections. And if you're young enough, it's going to rebuild. The stock market never stays down. But I don't know. The thing with corporations and deflation that you were talking about, it's like, if you have any common sense and you're looking at the profit margins, it's like, well, just 5 years ago they were able to work off of those margins. I mean, the number may look like less, but if everything is deflating at the same rate, then really you're not losing anything. The number just looks smaller on the books. But it's crazy. It's crazy what some of the economists in this country actually think, because the prevailing economist opinions from the left right now are, well, you just print money. The way to get out of any problem in this country is print more money, and then tax to take money out of the system. So their whole idea is we print more money and then we tax people more.
It reminds me of when just this last, I think, cycle, when Adam Schiff was running in California for the U.S. Senate, and it was the Democrat primary, and he
Hmm.
was facing someone out of San Francisco, and one of her positions was raising the minimum wage to $50 an
Yeah, why
hour.
not a million? I mean,
And she answered, like, because someone like, if we raise this, won't that put businesses, she's like, I ran a business, I know what it takes to do that, but I also know that, the living wage needed for someone in San Francisco for just an individual is $104,000, and this and I was like, do you not see what will happen? I
So
mean,
rather than correcting that problem, let's just give people more money,
so if she
and
gives,
then those prices will go up more.
yeah, it's
Remember, it was
it's
just 10, 15 years ago they were trying to raise the minimum wage to like $10, then $15. And now we're up to $25. Now they're going to push it to $50. It's the same question that we all asked when they tried to raise the minimum wage 15, 20 years ago of, okay, when does it stop? It doesn't stop. They're just going to keep trying to raise the minimum wage higher and higher, which will put out of business most small businesses, because it's the small businesses that can't absorb that.
have you been to a McDonald's lately, Brahma?
Yeah,
Did you order from a person?
I use the app at all times now because you get better deals. So,
Yeah.
but
When
no,
you know
if you
what I'm
go
getting-
in, they've got the kiosks.
Yeah, there's
They've
not
got
a person
one
at the-
person who's kind of working in the front. Everybody else is in the back. There's half of the people that used to be in a McDonald's working at
Yeah.
any given shift.
Yeah, because at a certain
Because you automate what you can
Yeah.
rather than paying somebody a ridiculous
Because-
wage for something that
Yep.
was never meant to be a living wage.
You know what else? The kiosk doesn't screw up my orders. So I'm
Right.
just saying,
At
when
least I know that I
when
input it correctly.
when I hit the plus or minus on like a part of my order, it gets done right. But it's like everything else. You
The
start
order gets
pricing-
put through right. That doesn't mean the people in the back make it right. But
Yeah.
you at least know that it was entered correctly if
It
you were
was
the one
entered
entering the order. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
that's
know what
what's
you mean.
happened. Yeah, so I see culture in there. A nugget of chicken is $50. No, if you use the app and you get the deal, you can get like a 20-piece nugget, 4 McChickens, and fries for like $20. Which
Or my favorite, the McGangbang, where I get a triple
wait.
cheeseburger.
Can we isolate that?
The McGangbang. Triple cheeseburger, two
That's
hot
your-
and spicy chickens,
that's
hot,
your
hot and
favorite?
spicy McChickens, and you put the two hot and spicy McChickens in between the bread, and then you squish it all together.
Culture.
great.
I hope you're listening, because on the comic show, you 100% need to make sure that everyone is aware that Brahma's favorite thing is the McGangbang.
The McDonald's McGangbang.
Wow. All right. Which actually, that's a good. It's funny. This would be that's a good transition point. You wouldn't think it would be, but it is, for the White House Correspondents' Dinner, Nerd Prom.
The circle jerk.
Yeah, with the absolute stupidity that we were getting from these people. And yeah, culture.
You can't get over the McGangbang, can you?
It's just, it makes me laugh. It's funny. All right, so with the White House Correspondents' Dinner rounded out the week. This is the Nerd Prom, where the White House correspondents get together and circle jerk themselves into happy times about how prominent and important and responsible they are for the well-being of America. And this right here, this man on screen, is the
Man
current
in quotation marks.
is not an extra from Coming to America in 1988 with his soul glow. He is the president of the White House Correspondents Association. He is ostensibly the leader of the group of reporters who cover the White House. And yeah, he is not cosplaying as Prince. It is not Eric LaSalle doing that. But this was his, like, a clip of his little speech, which is crazy.
We journalists are a lot of things. We are competitive and pushy. We are impatient. And sometimes we think we know everything.
Again, this is not a Key and Peele character. I just want to be clear, because
Double
you
A
might
Ron?
think that- yeah.
But we're also human. We miss our families and significant life moments in service to this job. We care deeply about accuracy and take seriously the heavy responsibility.
Asterisks on that one. They care deeply about accuracy. I'm gonna have to. Where's the press X for doubt? That should immediately come up on screen.
Right.
Responsibility of being stewards of the public's trust. What we are not is the opposition. What we are not is the enemy of the people, and what we are not is the enemy of the state.
Uh, that's almost as funny as Brahma saying his favorite thing is McBang. Gangbang. Almost as funny. The idea that these guys are not relishing their role of being the opposition to Trump is ridiculous. The other thing that came up in this correspondence association was people trying to litigate how Biden had lied to them about his capabilities, and how, and this, I kid you not, Brahma, their take on it was, this is why we need to hold Trump to account, because we were complicit with letting the other administration lie and didn't call him out. So we need to be extra, extra hard on Donald Trump.
Yeah. We've got to reverse our position, and instead of covering it up now, we've got to make sure that we expose anything that might happen in the Trump administration.
Oh, Lindsay over there has a good statement right there. You're either the enemy of the people or the enemy of the state. You can't be both. You can't, and you can't be the ally of both, because honestly, the fourth estate, whatever glowing term you want for a free press,
Right.
the founders of this country always imagined the press would be adversarial to government, just adversarial, just they would never trust people in government ever. They didn't anticipate that the press would take a side and just run with it. They thought that a press would naturally just question people in power, because that's what their educated people did. Always question people with any type of authority.
Which is also why it's so hilarious that all the hippies that were constantly pressing against the state, 40, 50 years ago, they all raised their kids and they all grew up to be old people that do not question the government in any way.
Now playing Rage Against the Machine as long as you can prove proof of vaccination.
Yeah. They become that which they hated.
Oh, look at that. Let's give ourselves a standing ovation. We're so great. Aren't we all great people? We're so good.
The circle jerk.
It is. This whole thing is a ridiculous exercise. And let me get a freeze frame on that guy again, because he sends it up perfect. They self-congratulate themselves. They pretend that they had no responsibility in not covering the Biden administration. Oh, looks like Mod Air K on the Rumble side has something to say.
On the Rumble side, for $1, Mod Eric K, did you cover the zero interest? You do not have to pay back $120,000 loan for homes if you are just one race. I did see that story, and
That
then
was
I
out of
couldn't find it
Washington
again.
State. It
It's Washington State trying to do it, but
It is 100% going to get eviscerated in courts.
yes,
There is
the fact that they are proposing it though is
they didn't just propose it.
We
They
do
passed,
not understand it.
They passed it, and the
law.
governor signed it. It is
Yeah.
which is, it's interesting. So right, they passed this law based on what's called redlining, which was the old concept that minorities who would otherwise be qualified would not get home loans.
Right.
And because they know that it's illegal to give someone any kind of preferential loan rate based on race. And so their solution to this illegal, to the knowing that it's illegal to give anyone a preferential loan rate based on race, is to pass a law to give only certain races zero interest free loans.
And essentially $120,000 of down payment.
Yeah, and so
you don't have to pay it back.
Yeah, so every non-qualifying, because it's not just white, it's any non-qualifying group. You could be, I believe, Indian descent, Asian descent. You could be white.
Depends on which kind of Asian, because some of the Asians are now white.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Well, if you ever go to England, it always throws me off when they call everything Asian, because for them the thing when they say Asian, what they really are meaning is Indian and Pakistani descent, because that's who they mostly are
Right.
dealing with there. And they were like, it's our Asian population. I was like, oh, you mean Indian or you mean Pakistan?
Right.
Whereas in the United States, when we hear Asian, we think Japan,
We
Korean,
think what we used to
Chinese.
call Oriental, which is apparently a bad word now, even though it just means from the East or the Far East.
Yep, the Orient.
It actually made more sense than what we do now.
Yeah, so that's so gonna get, and again that's a good, it's the same blinders and thought processes that leads to the White House Correspondents Association thinking that they were the wronged party from the Joe Biden administration, where we were just not told and it was covered up because you didn't ask any goddamn questions or use your eyes.
And you also made fun of everybody on the right who pointed it out repeatedly that it was happening and said that, no, it's not happening. We didn't have a neuro, what was the doctor that kept visiting like 30 times? He was
Oh,
a brain
he was
specialist,
a
but
Parkinson's specialist.
yeah, Parkinson's specialist. But yeah, and the whole thing in Washington, it's basically just a bigger version of what Kamala was saying that she wanted to do, which we all called out correctly, would have just raised the cost of homes by $25,000 or $50,000 if you were just going to give people $25,000 or $50,000. They do not understand the economy.
No, or the laws and how they're going to get
Yeah,
railed once that goes
the
into federal
Constitution is
court.
something they absolutely can't understand. So,
Well, I mean, the Supreme Court as it's made up now, which is, even with as flighty as John Roberts is on a lot of things, the one thing he has been absolutely consistent on in ruling from the bench since he's been appointed to the Supreme Court is that race-based quotas or race-based programs are illegal. He is
right, like
he's
the
batting
affirmative action in college or
yeah,
in universities.
he's batting 1,000 for when these cases come to him. He usually writes the opinion. That his most famous quote as a Supreme Court justice, aside, I'm not talking about the convoluted mess of finding Obamacare legal, but his most famous actually referenced quote is, the way to end race-based quotas is to stop doing things based on race.
Right.
And in
The
so
Morgan Freeman way of thinking.
yeah. So I guess they're counting on that maybe this will fly through for a couple years before it gets done. But I think with Hermit Dillon running the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, this is absolutely the kind
Cases
of,
will be brought instantly.
they will be bringing these things immediately. And this is one where the federal government does has standing. Here's why. Standing is a big issue, right? Why, courts don't, if they can get out of hearing a case because of standing, they won't. Standing is, you are a party that is wronged or damaged by this process, so you can bring a court case. The
Like most
number
of the 2020 cases with Trump.
Yeah, the number one underwriter of mortgages in the United States is the federal government. You've through something called the Federal Housing Authority, FHA. You know this, Brahma. You
Mm-hmm.
may have heard of the FHA loans, FHA qualified home mortgages.
Fannie
I
Mae,
guarantee
Freddie Mac.
I guarantee you that a lot of these home purchases are going to be FHA, first time home buyer program mortgages. And if someone is getting this money that others can't, the FHA and these people are effectively being qualified for homes that they shouldn't be getting because they don't have the money to do it otherwise.
Which is what caused the first housing
Yeah.
crisis.
The federal government in this case has standing, or at least I think reasonably could argue they have standing to bring these cases against the state of Washington for this program. Not to mention, they could also bring it under as the Civil Rights Division.
Civil rights. Yeah.
They usually just bring it based on violations of people's rights in general.
Mm-hmm.
Equal opportunity clauses, due process clauses. There's a lot of ways to attack this stupidity. So
True.
Uh, yeah.
But we are getting past the time, and the granddaughter showed up about 10 minutes ago, and I'm already getting the side eye, so we better wrap it
Yep.
up. A couple things we didn't get to that we'll probably touch on. Well, one thing we'll touch on next week. So, one of the things we didn't get to that's just an interesting tidbit, the Kennedy Center has canceled all of its Pride Month events. So,
Yep.
that's healing. The country is healing.
Oh,
And
I
then,
forgot to
then
the
we'll probably
pilot.
we'll get on the Epstein accuser removal
Oh.
of herself probably next week as more details come out on that, because don't know that anybody trusts that one.
Yeah,
And
especially when
yeah, if you
someone
want to do
comes
a
out
quick update
yeah.
on the pilot, sure.
Yeah, just as a quick update, we covered when it happened. It was a big story, which was the helicopter crash, the Black Hawk helicopter that crashed into the airplane here in Washington
In
D.C.
DC.
And we've had the Washington Post, I believe, finally had put together a story where they were referencing the actual flight data recordings. Now, when they recovered the recordings, they pulled in the information, and this is I'm gonna kind of share just real quick. This is it was New York Times, not Washington Post, the two papers record. But their headline is that there were missteps, equipment problems, and common but risky practice leading to the crash. That's all their way to cover up this part. 15 seconds away from crossing paths with a jet, Warrant Officer Eves, who was the training pilot, he was the one in charge of training the officer, the female pilot, turned his attention to Captain Loback. He told her he believed air traffic control wanted them to turn left towards the East Riverbank. She did not turn left. So this is one part of the story. They also go on to have a part where he had said like 3 times that she was flying above the altitude they had told her to fly at. She was only supposed to be 200 feet up, and she was over 300.
Yep.
I think they're burying the lead to protect this, but the bottom line is it looks like from the flight data recorder now, from what was recorded in the Black Hawk cockpit, she was being told multiple times before this happened she was flying too high, she wasn't in the right flight path, she needed to correct these things. And this is my favorite part. Captain Lobach said she would, which is correcting her altitude. But 2.5 minutes later, the Black Hawk was still above the 200 feet level and at a dangerous height. She ignored him. This is the first death by ignoring mansplaining, and she killed 70 people on a plane because of it. She killed everybody in
Herself
that
and
Black
everybody on
Hawk
the helicopter.
because she wouldn't listen. Now, why this guy as the training officer didn't take the controls, I don't know what the protocol is for how quickly you're supposed to do that.
Right.
But in the end, this is 100% pilot error, knowing pilot error, because she was told not to do these things that led to this crash.
And confirmed a lot of suspicions we all
Yep.
had, but we waited for as much of the news to come out as we could.
Yeah, so this is, and now that we've got it from the Black Hawk data recorder, I mean, they were trying to blame this on Trump. And I think that it's crazy because they're like, it's the air traffic controllers. We know now from these Black Hawk logs that they received the warnings from air traffic control to move out of the path and to lower their altitude. And they did not.
Refused to.
Yeah, even though she acknowledged that she was supposed to. So as a follow-up,
I always wanted to know how deep into the story that was buried.
that was at the like back end of it. According to let's see, until the last few sentences of the entire story. So
So buried pretty deep.
yeah, it's they're trying to they make all the excuses before they get to the part where she knew what she was supposed to do and didn't do it. And we got in a lot of there was a lot of heat for us claiming early on that DEI may have been a leading cause of this accident, but it looks like DEI was the
Turns out
leading
it
cause
might
of
have
this
been the
accident.
direct cause of this accident.
Yeah, and Slender brings up this is what happens when people are afraid to offend special interest groups. I would tell you, my suspicion is if this had been a male pilot that he was training who ignored him after that number of warnings, the warrant officer would have said, "I'm taking the stick," and
Right. You fail
you
your
fail
training.
because you're doing it. But remember, this woman also worked at the White House as a liaison with the Biden administration. She was connected,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's pressure to make sure that your people who, when they're connected,
That she
are,
gets through.
because she was, she's a poster girl for being, look, she's a Black Hawk pilot too. She can do it. So,
Anything.
yeah. So there you go. Just as a,
Yep.
we like to make sure that when we cover a story, when we get a meaningful update, you guys learn about it too.
Especially that meaningful.
Yep.
So, what do you got coming up this week? I did put Ascendant Art and Ascendant Arcade in the chat if people would like to go over there and sub to Little Chad and his co-host for Friday nights, Slender Dad at Ascendant Arcade.
Yeah, we have two. Ascendant Arcade is where we do our gaming. Slender Dad kind of runs that show, but I'm usually there hanging out a lot of the time too. Same with Brahma. So if people want to go to that channel, but the Ascendant Art podcast is is Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Uh, we've been, I think, having a lot of good shows lately. It's been good. We've been covering Mobland in detail, giving full breakdowns. A lot of other people are starting to pick up on the fact that that's a great show. So you can go back to watch some of our previous episodes if you want to catch up on how we broke down Mobland so far. We're gonna new episode today, and we'll be
Yep.
covering it next Friday.
Which gives everybody a ton of time to watch the episode before we go into a detailed breakdown of the episode. So, yeah. Tuesday we've got our Mad's new channel show.
Matapap on
Matapap.
Mad's new channel.
Every paragraph a pause. So go check that one out. Let's see. I don't know what I've got coming up this week. I'll be on comics as usual on Monday and Thursday. Be on the midweek hump with Shags on Wednesday. Friday with you guys. Saturday night we've got Bourbon and Boarding. We are in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and Saturday night, if there is a Game 7 between Dallas and the Avs, will also be Saturday night. So we may have another watch along next week. And then we're back here on Sunday mornings. If everybody could give us a comment on the video on the YouTube side, at least, I would appreciate it. We would like to know, do you guys like the show at this time, or would you be interested in us pushing it to Sunday evening instead? It might help me with the whole late Saturday night to early Sunday morning thing. So let us know what you think of us maybe moving the show to a Sunday evening show. But yeah, thanks everybody for being here, and we will catch you throughout the week. Hope everybody has a good one. Later, everybody.
Bye.